Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dogs, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below, and if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at PickDogs.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games in baseball for Wednesday. First up, we go to the afternoon game between the Chicago Cubs and the Cincinnati Reds. Now, most of the games for Wednesday's card are in the afternoon. In fact, there's only one game that's past 4 o'clock Eastern. Love these afternoon baseball games, but I got to be honest, I'm not really in love with this Wednesday card betting-wise. I do think there's a lot of tough spots for Wednesday's card where there's some contradictory information. Maybe one team has something going for it in a certain, statistic, but the other team also has something going for it in another facet of the game. So, I'll be treading lightly for Wednesday's card overall, but we see Marcus Stroman and Hunter Greene on the mound for this Cubs-Reds matchup. Marcus Stroman last year pitched really well, both at Great American Ballpark and against the Cincinnati Reds overall. He had an ERA below 2 against the Reds last season. I know that's a different Reds team this year, but still, it's important to look at the fact that he pitched 11 innings, only giving up 2 earned runs with a 1.64 ERA, had 15 strikeouts as well. Marcus Stroman, not necessarily known as a strikeout pitcher, but over 1 strikeout per inning against the Reds last season. He was also a pitcher last year that preferred pitching in day games, and he also preferred pitching on the road. We saw last year at Wrigley Field, Marcus Stroman a 5.18 ERA, on the road a 2.06, and in day games a lower ERA as well at 3.31 compared to night games at 3.71. On the other side, though, Hunter Greene, he struggled in day games a lot more so than he pitched in night games. We saw his ERA difference in night and day games, similar to a guy like Josiah Gray. Hunter Greene in day games had a 5.57 ERA. In night games, 3.87. The home runs, 14 allowed in only 42 innings in day games. 10 home runs allowed in 83 innings. So basically, double the innings, but still 4 more home runs allowed in day games. I just can't back Hunter Greene in this matchup. Give me the Chicago Cubs on the money line. Next up, it's the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Washington Nationals with 2 lefties on the mound in this one, Shane McClanahan and Patrick Corbin. Now, to me, this is a pitching mismatch. We see Shane McClanahan, his first start of the season, 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, no earned runs, only 1 walk. Now, sure, that was against one of the weaker lineups in baseball in the Detroit Tigers, but McClanahan's facing another weak lineup here in the Washington Nationals. For me, there's no reason to not think that McClanahan's going to have another strong outing here, 6-7 sharp innings for the Rays, and the bullpen should be able to take care of the rest. On the other side, Patrick Corbin struggled in his opening day outing against the Braves. His defense didn't do him any favors, that's for sure, but still, his final line, 3 innings, 7 base hits, a very high pitch count, 3 walks as well, 2 earned runs, 4 total runs. He had 3 strikeouts, but that was a 7-2 loss for the Nationals overall. Wouldn't be surprised to see a similar result in this game. I think that the Rays offense has been pretty sharp to start the year. They should be able to get to Corbin. They should be able to add a few runs on the bullpen as well. So for that reason, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Rays here. I'm going to lay the run line. Next up, it's the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the New York Yankees. We're going to see Aaron Nola and Gerrit Cole as your starters for this one. 2 starting pitchers that have big expectations year after year going into the season, but 2 pitchers that had opposite starts in their first outings. We saw Gerrit Cole, one of the best starts I've really seen him have in a long time. 6 innings, 11 strikeouts, 3 base hits, 2 walks, no earned runs. It was a 5-0 win for the Yankees. He was razor sharp on opening day, a great sign for Yankee fans. On the other side, Aaron Nola really struggled in his first start of the season. 3 2/3 innings. He had 4 strikeouts, so he missed some bats, but he gave up a home run. He gave up 2 walks, 4 base hits, and 5 earned runs in an 11-7 Phillies loss. That was a game where the Phillies had a 5-0 lead early on, and Nola blew that lead. So not what you want to see from Aaron Nola, and now you're going into Yankee Stadium, facing a very tough Yankees lineup, but facing Gerrit Cole on the other side. To me, just not a very good spot, and the price is pretty good here with the New York Yankees, so I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Miami Marlins. We're going to see Jesus Luzardo and Pablo Lopez as your starters. Pablo Lopez, of course, pitching against his former team. He was a part of the Luis Arraez trade in the offseason. So far, it's helping out both teams. Luis Arraez, at least going into Tuesday's games, is hitting above 500 with a couple ribbies. And Pablo Lopez, in his first outing with his new team, he won the game for the Twins. He pitched 5 1/3 innings against the Royals and had 8 strikeouts, no earned runs, only 2 base hits allowed. So both players playing well and, looking like an even trade thus far. But I do think Pablo Lopez obviously wanting to pitch pretty well against his former team. team, and this is a Marlins lineup that's been pretty inconsistent, more towards the negative side this season. And we saw last year they were one of the weaker lineups in baseball. So for me, this sets up to be another solid start for Pablo Lopez. And on the other side, Jesus Luzardo is a really good young arm. He pitched well in his first start of the year, but that was against the New York Mets, a team that's notably struggled against lefties the last couple of seasons. And now you're playing a Twins team that so far, it's very, very early, small sample size. They are hitting lefties very well. So I do think Luzardo could give up a few runs early in this one, and that should be enough for a Twins pitching staff that's facing a Marlins team that's just not trustworthy offensively. Other than a guy like Luis Arraez, this team has just not been putting together consistent good at-bats. So I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins. I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Atlanta Braves. This one's going to be between Bryce Elder and Miles Mikolas on the mound for now, but there is no official lineup for this game right now, so we could see a pitching change. But Miles Mikolas really struggled in that first outing, his season debut against the Blue Jays. We know, very tough lineup, but he's facing another one here. In that game, he went 3 1/3 innings pitched, 10 base hits, 5 earned runs. He had 6 strikeouts, so we don't think of Miles Mikolas as a very strikeout pitcher. Last year, well below 1 strikeout per inning, but to see him miss some bats, that's the only promising sign to see from that that rough start. But the Atlanta Braves, like I said, a very tough lineup to face, and they're playing very well to start the year. I do think Mikolas gives up a few runs early. We know the Cardinals bullpen has also struggled quite a bit to start the 2023 season. But on the other hand, I can't trust Bryce Elder, who struggled in spring training. And for me, last year an ERA at 3.17, but a FIP and XFIP much higher than that ERA. And in spring training, 11 2/3 innings pitched. He gave up 3 home runs, had a 6.17 ERA. Only 9 strikeouts, so this was a guy that had 7.8 Ks per 9 last year, a little bit below league average, and now you're facing a Cardinals lineup that already does a great job at limiting those strikeouts. I don't think this is going to be a very good outing for Bryce Elder either, so give me the over in Braves Cardinals. Next up, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Boston Red Sox. Mitch Keller and Corey Kluber are your starters for this one. 2 starters that struggled in their season debuts. Corey Kluber against the Orioles, giving up 5 earned runs and 3 1/3 innings pitched. He had 4 strikeouts, but he also had some control issues, 4 walks allowed, and 2 home runs allowed. Is probably the most concerning thing I see, because Kluber's done a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground the last couple of years, and to give up the long ball, 2 of them to the Orioles, not a great sign. On the other side, Mitch Keller also had some control issues in his first outing. He gave up 4 earned runs against the Cincinnati Reds, but he had 8 strikeouts, so at least he was missing some bats. We know Great American Ballpark, not an easy place to pitch, but neither is Fenway Park, so Mitch Keller's going to have to sharpen up for this start. I think he does enough. I think Mitch Keller's got some upside in his game. We saw the Pirates win the first game of this series. They were able to go toe-to-toe offensively with this Red Sox lineup. A very strong lineup, but the pitching staff for the Boston Red Sox has not been very good. Not good enough for me to want to lay this kind of price with them. So give me the 1.5 runs here with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. We're going to see Corbin Burnes and David Peterson on the mound for this one. This is really a tough game for me, as I'm honestly leaning towards the New York Mets and the plus money, because we saw the Mets really get to Corbin Burnes last year in the 2 outings that they faced him. 11 2/3 innings, giving up 12 base hits, 7 earned runs. He had 12 strikeouts, gave up a home run, so a 5.4 ERA in those 2 outings. And David Peterson is a lefty. We see the Brewers struggle to begin the year against lefties, and we saw last year against left-handers, the Brewers were not a very good lineup. So, the big thing holding me back with the Mets, though, is I don't really like to back David Peterson. I do think he has some control issues, and although his strikeout stuff is getting better, we saw him give up 8 base hits and a home run against the Marlins in his season debut. So it's just tough to back him, and we saw the Brewers offense in that first game of the series. It was pretty electric. So for me, I'm leaning towards the under. I'm just going to play the matchups here. I think Corbin Burnes is still a very good starting pitcher. Although the Mets got to him last year, I think he'll be able to give the Brewers 4 or 5 strong innings. And on the other side, David Peterson, I think, with being a left-handed pitcher and having a decent start to start the year, we should see Peterson give the Mets 4 to 5 quality innings as well. So I'm leaning towards the Mets on the money line, leaning towards the under, but right now a game I'm staying away from. Next up, it's the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Texas Rangers. Kyle Gibson facing his former team in this one, and Jacob deGrom on the other side for the Rangers. For me, Jacob deGrom, he struggled, there's no doubt about it, against the Phillies in his first start as a Ranger. 3 2/3 innings, giving up 5 earned runs and a homer. He also had 7 strikeouts. He didn't have a single walk, and I think he's going to bounce back nicely in a game like this, and I think deGrom will go on to be one of the better pitchers in the American League this season. On the other side, Kyle Gibson struggled himself in his first outing of the year and with his new team. 5 innings, 6 base hits, 4 earned runs against the Boston Red Sox. Now, his Orioles bats did enough in that game to find the victory, and Gibson actually got the win in that 10-9 final score. but I don't think it's going to be enough in this spot on the road against a solid Rangers lineup with DeGrom on the bump. DeGrom should give the Rangers 5-6 strong innings, missing a lot of bats along the way. I think the Rangers win this game on the run line. So give me the Texas Rangers. I'm going to lay the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Houston Astros with Christian Javier and Eduardo Rodriguez on the bump for this one. I expect a lower scoring game in this game. We already know the Detroit Tigers, one of the weaker offenses in baseball. Although they had a great night in the first game of this series, I do think Christian Javier is a very tough starting pitcher to face for a team like Detroit. I think Javier will be able to pick up the strikeouts and keep runners off base as well. The Detroit Tigers, not a ton of power in this lineup, so I do think Javier, who at times has had issues with the long ball, should be able to give the Astros 5-6 really good innings. On the other side, Eduardo Rodriguez has been inconsistent the last couple of seasons. We know the Astros could certainly hit left-handed pitching, but I like the fact that Eduardo Rodriguez, although he struggled in terms of the ERA and the earned runs against the Rays in his first start, he was able to pick up 5 strikeouts across 5 1/3 innings. I think he does enough to keep this game respectable and low scoring in the end. So, the Astros are big favorites. To me, there's not a ton of value with them, so I'm just going to take the under in this Tigers-Astros matchup. Next up, we see Logan Webb and Dylan Cease going at it in this one in the Chicago White Sox-San Francisco Giants matchup. Now, Logan Webb had a really strange start in his opening day out against the Yankees. The Yankees won that game 5-0 in the end, but Logan Webb gave up 2 home runs. He gave up 4 earned runs in the end in 6 innings of work, so obviously not his best start. He took the loss in that game. And we saw at the end of last year, he was starting to give up some higher exit velocities, even though he's a ground ball pitcher that looks to keep the ball in the yard. He was giving up some hard hits last year at the end of the regular season, but I think the big surprising thing was Logan Webb struck out 12 batters in 6 innings of work. Webb is more of a pitch-to-contact guy, so to see him miss a ton of bats is a pretty promising sign for me. And I do think, although he could probably have a good outing in this one, it's just tough to back the Giants with Dylan Cease on the other side, who also had an incredible outing in terms of the missed bats in his first start. 6 1/3 against the Astros, a very tough team to face, especially on the road, and especially when you're looking for strikeouts. The Astros do a really good job at limiting those. He had 10 strikeouts in that game, only giving up 1 earned run in that 3-2 White Sox win. I do think Dylan Cease provides another good outing here for his home team, and I think the White Sox bats can do enough against Logan Webb and that pretty weak Giants bullpen to grab a win in the end. So should be a pretty fascinating matchup, but I'm going to take the Chicago White Sox. I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Oakland Athletics. We're going to see Hunter Gaddis and Kyle Muller on the mound for this one. We saw a super high-scoring game in the first matchup between these two, and I do think we're going to see another high-scoring game in this one. So give me the over here. Hunter Gaddis struggled against the Seattle Mariners, 3 2/3 innings, 5 base hits, 4 earned runs. He had 4 strikeouts. He also walked a guy. And I do think the Athletics, a pretty weak lineup overall, but still showed up in that first game of this series. I think they'll be able to put a few runs on the board on Gaddis, but I do think most of the scoring will come from the Cleveland Guardians, who have just been hitting the ball very well as of late. And we see Kyle Muller, who pitched pretty well in his first start. I still think the Guardians do a great job of getting on base. They put the ball in play. They limit strikeouts. We saw that in the first matchup where they were down 6-2 at one point, but they just did not, this is a team that's never out of it no matter what the score is. They find ways to rally, and they did so late in the middle to late innings in that one. I think against this Oakland Athletics bullpen cannot be trusted. I think the Guardians will score plenty for us. So give me the over in the Guardians Athletics. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Seattle Mariners. We're going to see Chris Flexen on the mound for the Mariners, Shohei Ohtani on the other side for the Halos. Chris Flexen, not really a starting pitcher that I back very often because he doesn't have the best strikeout stuff, and he can have some control issues as well. We saw that in his first outing of the season. Although he didn't get burned too bad, only giving up 1 earned run in 4 innings, he still walked 3 batters, and he still had only 1 strikeout. That was out of the bullpen as well in a game where the Guardians were up big, but I do think the Angels will be able to get to Chris Flexen in this matchup. I think Shohei Ohtani on the other side, not a bad pitching option for the Angels. He pitched very well in his first start of the season. Against the Oakland A's, we know a pretty weak lineup, but the Mariners offensively have been pretty inconsistent to start the year. And Shohei Ohtani, 6 innings, 10 strikeouts, no earned runs in that first start. Even though the Angels lost that game in the end because the bats didn't back him up, I still think Ohtani gets enough run support in this game against Flexen to earn the victory for the Angels. So give me the Los Angeles Angels. I'm going to take them on the money line. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays and the Kansas City Royals for our final game for Wednesday night. Alek Manoah and Zach Greinke are your starters. We know Alek Manoah struggled in his first start of the season, giving up those 5 earned runs and 2 homers to the St. Louis Cardinals, but it just goes to show how strong this Blue Jays offense is this year, because the Blue Jays still went on to win that game 10-9, the final score, and I do think the Blue Jays offense is going to lead Toronto to another win and a run line cover in this spot against Zack Greinke, a starter I don't usually look to back too often, especially in the later years of his career where his strikeout numbers just have not been very good. I do think the Blue Jays will be able to get to him, and we saw in the first matchup between these two where Jose Barrios just did not have his good stuff. He gave up a lot of runs early on, and the Royals just took advantage of it. We still saw the Blue Jays offense show up in the late innings in that one, get to the Royals bullpen, and that's a concern I have for the Royals in this game as well. Their bullpen has been inconsistent this season. I do think the Blue Jays will be able to continue to hit after Greinke has left the game, and I think for that reason, give me the Blue Jays land the 1.5 runs. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at Pick Dogs Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.